Hello, dear learners. Welcome to my channel Microbiology Tutorials. Today I am going to discuss about Gantt chart and its application in formulating any of the research design. So let's start today's lecture. So Gantt chart is a research is a visual timeline shaped like a bar graph that maps our project tasks against scheduled dates. It helps academic researchers plan phases like literature reviews, data collection, and editing, proving to committees or funders that the study is organized and feasible. Gantt charts provide a visual roadmap showing project activities, time frames, and dependencies, and are the core tool in project management. These charts, which have their roots in the important work of Henry L. Grant, an American mechanical engineer who designed this Gantt chart, gives team members and managers a clear picture of project timetables and progress. Gantt chart reduces the complexity of project planning, coordination, and assessment throughout the project lifecycle by depicting tasks as horizontal bars. Gantt chart is a bar chart that displays a project schedule according to a list of tasks. The Gantt chart is commonly used graphical depiction of a project schedule. It's a type of bar chart showing the start and finish dates of a project segment, such as its services, planning, and dependencies. Some university departments require students to create a Gantt chart to represent a schedule for the research project. The Gantt chart shows the timelines of the various steps of the project, including the dependencies and any resources needed. In other words, the chart depicts when an event is supposed to take place in the project by providing an outline regarding the order used by various tasks need to be performed. Utilizing such a diagram can greatly enhance the project planning and execution, ensuring all aspects are considered, dependencies are taken into account, and milestones are planned. It fosters better coordination, communications, and understanding in the team members, leading to more efficient and effective project management. So we can say that a Gantt chart usually helps to solve the time frame of undertaking any of the projects. We will see initially it was started to for in the project management by the managers to how successfully complete any of the project. But it can also be utilized in designing the research projects, and it can greatly help the researchers to uh, divide their different phases of their work in different segments as per their schedule, and can also make it feasible to adjust their time limit. So let's proceed further. So here you can see that different types of the topics included in the task part. That is a topic selection, literature review, methodology drafting, proposal writing, revisions, ethics approval, and finally the final submissions. Here we can see that how in the month of July to mid-August, topic selection, or we can say in other words, research problem. The researchers greatly work on research problems because it requires a lot of efforts to solve the research problem or to formulate a research problem. And in that only we include literature reviews. You can see the second part. Then comes the methodology drafting, which is an important part of the how the techniques, research methods which have to be applied in any of the research work. Then comes the proposal writing, or we can say synopsis. Then revisions, ethics approval, uh, usually from the ethics committee, and finally the final submission of the research work. So this is how through Gantt chart we can utilize the Gantt chart for our successful completions of research work within the stipulated time period. Next part is that in the high stakes environment of modern academia, planning is often the difference between a project that stalls and one that succeeds. Whether you are a doctoral candidate mapping out a thesis, a lead investigator preparing a high value grant application, or lab manager balancing dozens of experimental streams, the ability to visualize the project's projections is invaluable. So here the role of Gantt chart comes, which is a powerful time-based project management tool that is increasingly becoming a staple in research methodology. For many researchers, project management can feel like a corporate distraction from actual scientific work. However, a Gantt chart in research is far more than administrative burden. It is a structural map of our scientific journey. It forces us to translate abstract hypotheses and vague ideas into concrete five-bar milestones. By visualizing our research timeline, we don't just gain better control over our schedule, we demonstrate feasibility to review committees, manage dependencies effectively, and protect our most valuable resources, that is the time. This guide provides a practical framework for integrating Gantt charts into our research workflow, moving beyond business jargon to address the unique uncertainties from experimental failures to sample procurement delays that define the research process. So, what is the application of Gantt chart in research? At its core, a Gantt chart is a bar chart that illustrates a project schedule in an academic context. It maps out the various stages of our research against a specific timeline. Unlike a simple to-do list, a Gantt chart displays the start and end date of all tasks, how they overlap, and how they connect. Translating this to research means moving from abstract concepts like complete literature review to tangible, actionable blocks of time. For example, rather than just noting a goal, we define the task as collect initial literature and synthesize the gaps assigned to a specific 4-week block. Modern grant proposals, particularly in fields requiring extensive resources or collaborative multi-year efforts, increasingly mandate these visual timelines. They are not just for our own organizations, they are a communication tool. A well-constructed Gantt chart tells a committee, I have thought through the feasibility of the study. I understand the time required for each phase, and I have a clear plan to navigate from hypothesis to a research work. So we can say here that the Gantt chart, usually there is a confusion earlier that mostly it is used for the successful completion of project work in the business field. But it may deviate the researchers from its own work because it is more concentrated on from the management part. But it is not so because Gantt chart usually helps in better planning for successful execution of the research work because research work is also works in a phase-wise manner and each and every work we have to do in a systematic way. So and that too in a limited time period frame. So it is necessary that as we plan our daily work, it is also necessary that within that period of timeline, we should also formulate or we should also complete the project. And if we prepare a Gantt chart and show our supervisors or our management that we are planning in a such manner that and give our presentation, it is a very it becomes a very effective tool in help them to not only understand but also to take interest in our project. Next is the why research project need Gantt charts. So research projects are notoriously prone to scope creep and research drift. Without a rigid timeline, it is easy to spend months on literature review or lose focus during the data-heavy collection phase, as I already discussed it there. So Gantt charts serve three critical functions in this regard. Visualizing feasibility for stakeholders is the first functions. Committees and grants reviewers need assurance that our project is realistic. A Gantt chart provides an immediate visual confirmation that our proposed work fits within the allocated time and budget, effectively separating the wish list of tasks from the hard chronological reality of what can be accomplished. Identifying dependencies and critical paths is the second function. Scientific research is rarely linear, as experiment B often requires a successful completion of experiment A. Some tasks have external dependencies, such as waiting for ethics committee approval, securing lab equipment, or receiving patient samples. The Gantt chart highlights these dependencies, allowing you to see the critical path, the sequence of tasks that if delayed will push back our final completion date. By knowing what is critical, we can prioritize those tasks accordingly. So these can be really beneficial in our research work. Now, managing resources and preventing drift in the is the third functions. Long-term research projects suffer from a lack of momentum. The Gantt chart acts as a benchmark, holding us accountable to our own milestones by breaking down the research cycle into specific, trackable chunks. We prevent the feeling of being overwhelmed and ensure steady progress toward our final goal rather than getting stuck in one segment for a disproportionate amount of time. So how to build a research Gantt chart? So it is a five-step process. First is the building an effective research Gantt chart is an iterative exercise in planning. So the following are the five steps. First, step one is to decompose the methodology. That is the work breakdown structures. To begin by listing every single activity required for our project. We have not to focus on time yet, focus on the scope. This is our work down structure, that is in short, the work breakdown structure, in short, WBS. Break broad goals like data analysis into granular tasks, clean data set, perform statistical testing. X, generate plots for chapter 3. In research, the more specific you are here, the easier the planning becomes. Next is that, so remember, this is not just an administrative list, it's our project's DNA. If we miss a critical step like getting an export permit for sensitive materials or completing a specific training requirement, our entire timeline will shift. Similarly, same that in the research also, if some important point is missed, so the entire uh, research work will get derailed or it will not achieve the objectives of the research and come to a valid conclusions. So to think as a deep dive phase of our planning, where we map out every technical hurdle, we anticipate even the ones that seems minor. So every minor things are also taken into consideration here. Step two is to estimate realistic durations and also to add buffer time. So research is inherently unpredictable. If we believe in a lab experiment, we will take 2 weeks, treat that as a best case scenario and build in a buffer. A common mistake is to create a perfect schedule that offers zero room for error. In academia, building slack into your Gantt chart is not for procrastination, it is risk management. Factor in time for rerunning failed experiments or addressing unexpected methodological challenges. For complex projects, we use a weighted estimation approach, define a conservative, likely, and aggressive duration for each task. The conservative estimate is what goes onto our chart to ensure the project remains viable when if things don't go according to plan. This honesty estimation is what distinguishes a senior researchers from a novice. So it helps to explain or to plan our research in a stepwise or systematic manner, and obviously it helps a researcher from to become very experienced or gain expertise in its field and shift, or we can say, and from new ones to an expert. It so helps the better transition of a new researcher into an expert researcher. Next is the sequencing activities and identifying dependencies. Once our tasks are listed in time, place them in chronological order, identify which tasks are sequential and which are parallel. So here, drawing these connections on our chart will reveal our critical path, showing how exactly where the highest research project delay lies. Visualizing milestones. Milestones are the anchor points of a research project. They are not tasks but moments of completion. Examples include ethics board approval received, pilot data collected, or first the draft of manuscript completed. On a Gantt chart, milestones are often represented by diamonds or unique symbols. They act as psychological motivators and checkpoints for both the researcher and the funding body. Milestones should be non-negotiable markers that trigger transitions between project phases, ensuring that you never move on from a crucial step without proper validation. So step 3 and step 4 we already discussed here. Step 3 is sequencing activities and identifying dependencies, and step 4 is visualizing milestones. Now coming to the step 5 or the last step. So iteration, why Gantt chart is a living document. So a research Gantt chart is not meant to be printed once and filed away. It is a living, breathing tool. As our research progression, the timeline will inevitably change. Use the chart to track reality against our plan. If a data collection phase runs along, update our Gantt chart to see how it impacts future phases like analysis and writing. Regularly revisiting the chart keeps it relevant and prevents it from becoming a relic of a perfect world that no longer exists. Treat the chart as a dynamic interface. Every time a milestone is hit or missed, perform a quick triage to see if the subsequent phases need adjustment. Practical example, Gantt chart for research proposals. For a typical one-year research project, the Gantt chart should reflect a balanced flow across the four research phases. Here is how it might map those tasks onto a timeline. So literature review planning, we can take 1 to 8 weeks. So in this phase, we are setting the foundation. Tasks include systematic literature, searching, identifying a specific gap, and securing preliminary ethical approvals. So this time we should not underestimate, as because it is a solid foundation and to prevent significant revisions later. For instance, creating an annotated bibliography as part of a review process can make phase 4 writing significantly easier. Phase 2 is data collection and experiments. It will take 9 to 32 weeks. So this is usually the longest, most resource-intensive phase. In the study involves wet lab experiments. Your Gantt chart should reflect batch cycles or integration periods. If it involves social science research, it might include recruitment, surveys, and interviews. Map this task weekly. This is where we insert our buffer zones for potential equipment delays or participant unavailability. If we are conducting longitudinal research, build in recovery weeks where we can address sudden data gaps or technical malfunctions. Analysis and interpretation from 33 to 48 week. Once data is collected, it must be synthesized. This phase is often the bottleneck. Activities include cleaning data sets, running statistical models, and conducting preliminary analysis. Map the phase alongside the early writing phase if our methodology allows. By beginning to draft our results section while we are still analyzing the final batches of data, we can significantly accelerate our timeline. Phase 4 is the writing and dissemination from 41st to 52 weeks. So this is the final stage. Activities include drafting chapters, creating visualizations, receiving peer feedback, and submitting for publications or final reforms. Having a Gantt chart here ensures we have adequate time for the notoriously slow peer review or advisor feedback process. Treat this phase as structured writing marathon. Assign specific chapters or data visualization tasks to designated weeks, which keep us from experiencing the writer's block that often accompanies large open-ended writing tasks. So tips for managing research uncertainty. Research is often journey into the unknown. When we encounter a failed experiment or a delayed data delivery, the Gantt chart can quickly feel obsolete. Here is to keep it functional. Implement buffer zones. So we have to, what is buffer zone? So essentially to treat them as essential infrastructure, not optional additions. 20 to 30% extra time to high risk activities. Embrace modularity, design the project in modules that can guarantee if one piece fails. The accountability audit schedule a bi-weekly chart check. If we are 2 weeks behind on data collection, decide immediately whether to compress the analysis phase, move a secondary goal to an optional category, or discuss the delays with our supervisors or committee. Sync with daily work. The Gantt chart is the what and when, but our daily task list is the how. Link them if our chart shows data collection is happening this week. Make sure the daily tasks clearly reflect the experimental states for that phase. Next, the tools and resources for creating research Gantt charts. So if you do not need enterprise web software to start, in fact, simple is often better than in the planning stage. So what are some of the tools? So spreadsheets like Excel sheets or Google Sheets. So this is the standard for academic planning. They are flexible, easily exported and familiar. Many free templates exist specifically for such timeline. We have to use them to create conditional formatting that changes cell color based on the percentage. As I already showed in the initial phase of the lecture. So a simple way to visualize status without advanced software. So what are some of the specialized project software? Tools like Asana, Monday.com, or Trello offer integrated Gantt views that make tasks easier, especially for collaborative research. Academic specific to some ELNs or lab management platforms. Principle, use the tool that has the lowest barrier to entry. If you spend more time configuring the software than planning itself, the tool has failed. Choose simplicity, clarity, and ease of operating. The best tool is the one we will actually use on a weekly basis. So finally, to conclude, a Gantt chart is a versatile asset in our research toolkit, turning the chaotic multi-year process of scientific inquiry into a clear, manageable path. By decomposing our work, identifying critical dependency, and acknowledging the need for flexibility, we don't just improve our project management, we demonstrate the value expected of high-level scholarships. Do not fear the process of building the chart, embrace it to view it as a dynamic map that guides you through the unpredictable landscape of research. When you can clearly visualize not just where you are, but where you need to be, you are no longer just reacting to research challenges, you are orchestrating your success. The chart empowers you to move with confidence, knowing that even if any changes, you still have the motivational framework to reach your destination. So these are some of the important benefits of creating a Gantt chart and the complexities of research work can easily to a great extent can be solved through making a Gantt chart for our research work, and it certainly help the researchers in gaining deep diving into the research work and planning it in a systematic manner so that uh, they can find easily detect the important parameters, important objectives which are involved in any of the research, as well as for successful and meaningful completion of the research in the stipulated time frame. With this, I conclude my today's lecture, and I hope that it would have certainly benefited you in your research work, or if you are planning your journey of research. If you liked my lecture, please do like and subscribe. which will certainly help me and keep me motivated to bring more topic related to the field of research. I thank you all for your patient learning and listening to it. Thank you. Thank you all.